All right, team, I got a great episode for you this week with the former president of the Walt Disney Corporation, Mr. Ben Sherwood. And Ben's on to some great things now. He started a new company called MOJO, helping parents coach their kids. He wants to revolutionize coaching at the youth sports level and get kids re-engaged and get them playing sports again, enjoying the games, enjoying the sports, and most importantly, taking the lessons away from sports that can help them go on and be great people. But in addition, I couldn't help but ask him about his time with the Walt Disney Company and leading people, and how helping to develop youth sports coaches and parents as youth sports coaches, how many of those lessons could be applied to developing talent in the world of business, developing leaders, and most importantly, developing people like you and I. So here we go, Mr. Ben Sherwood on the Becoming a Champion show. Enjoy today's episode. I know you will, and if you do, make sure you subscribe. Here we go. See ya. Again, I always say we get to read about you on Wikipedia, and we get to see you on Good Morning America and just out there in the public. But I always like to know what was little Ben Sherwood like, growing up? Were you always a ambitious, entrepreneurial kind of guy?
Well, first of all, little Benji Sherwood was Benji Sherwood grew up in Los Angeles, and I grew up in a home filled with love. I had a father who was a lawyer and was a brilliant, sort of towering figure and an important community leader and builder of a lot of the civic institutions in Los Angeles. He was very involved in the arts. And my mother was a volunteer and was an amazing force of energy. And we were just surrounded by an incredible amount of encouragement and belief. And we could do anything we set our minds to. Now, the one thing I could not do that I had set my mind to was youth sports. And I would just say that as it relates to you and to coaching and to all the things that you care about, I was the kid who wanted to be invisible on the field. I was the kid who wanted to disappear. And in soccer, playing on the Grasshoppers, I remember trying to hide my shin guards because I knew that if I didn't have shin guards, I couldn't go out on the field. And my coach knew that that was one of my tricks. And so he always had an extra pair of shin guards in his bag. So when mine somehow went missing, he pulled his out, and I was back out on the field trying to hide, usually somewhere around right or left back, just trying to disappear. But as you know, on a soccer field, there's really nowhere to hide.
Nowhere to hide.
And then in baseball, I played on the Phillies, and again, Mr. Franklin, who was my coach, was a wonderful, wonderful guy. No matter how many times I struck out with bases loaded, no matter how many fly balls I dropped, Mr. Franklin always put his arm around me after the game and told me the next game was going to be better. Practice would make me better. And then, of course, going to Shakey's Pizza after the game or Baskin Robbins for ice cream always somehow made all of those drop fly balls and strikeouts just go away. And it's part of why I love youth sports so much, is that I remember Mr. Franklin, I remember my teammates, and I really remember the experiences on the field. The Shakey's and the Swenson's ice cream also was one of my favorites.
Yeah. Well, as you say that, I think about how many pro athletes, and most people don't know this, they actually hide too. A lot of people don't know that, but there are pro athletes. There's in baseball, we call it the phantom DL. It's a disabled list, and it's phantom for guys that we know. They say they're hurt, but they really don't want to play. So it still goes on, and there's these confidence lapses that take place even at the professional level that most people don't know about.
That's interesting. I would say that I was not on the phantom DL. I was anything to avoid the ball. I was so afraid of the ball, and just the thing that I always marvel is the players, the women and the men who want the ball with 9 seconds left and the game on the line. They want the shot. when I ended up in high school playing a little bit of basketball and some volleyball on the school teams, my feeling was, thank God I'm not on the court right now, because I was always on the bench. Because the last place I would want to be is anywhere near the ball with 9 seconds left and the game on the line.
Yeah, but it's so interesting that you say that because when you look at your professional career, there had to be a lot of game on the line type stuff going on. Did you just feel like you had the skills to handle those things versus youth sports? Maybe you just didn't have the talent set, or what was it?
It's an interesting question. I think there are a lot of situations where I love to be in the control room in a television show, or love to be in the decision maker's position in business, and to make the call under pressure. But when it came to hitting a baseball, kicking a soccer ball, or
Mhm.
shooting a basket, I think that's just probably because I have a lot of self-awareness, and I knew that chances are I was going to swing and miss, kick and miss, or throw an air ball up there.
Got it. So you were good at self-evaluation, I guess, as a young guy.
I think self-awareness is a pretty important survival tool, and situational awareness. I spent some time later in my life working on the secrets and the science of the world's most successful survivors, people who have been left for dead on Mount Everest, or people who have survived mountain lion attacks, or have been beaten and left for dead after
Mhm.
muggings. And it's interesting that the people who make it out from tough situations, and there's a lot of luck involved and there's all kinds of factors involved, but having situational awareness and self-awareness are two of the most important things that they teach at the Navy's survival school, at the Air Force survival school. Understanding your situation, the threats, and then also understanding yourself and
Mm.
your strengths and your weaknesses, and having a realistic sense both of the situation and a realistic sense of yourself. And so I'd say maybe I was pretty realistic about myself and my aptitude for sports. And maybe I was a little bit overconfident along the way about my ability to handle a control room or a news situation or a business judgment.
Yeah. Well, now you have the chance, to help other kids, with MOJO, which is, a pretty cool platform. I know, since it is somewhat new, most people don't know about MOJO. What was your overall intent with that platform?
Yeah. So as a father, I've got boys who are 16 and 10, and I've been lucky to coach them for the last 12 years in a bunch of different sports, basketball and baseball and soccer and football. And I think that all the predicate is that I wasn't a very good athlete in any of those, but I really, really wanted to be out there on the field with my sons. And I really, really wanted to be part of their journey,
Mm.
maybe to correct a little bit of my own childhood where I wish I had had more support and more resources, or maybe just because that's the kind of dad I wanted to be. And I think that most parents really, if they've got the freedom and the time, really want to be a part of that journey and contribute. But the thing is, most of us are not pro athletes. Most of us didn't play D1. Most of us don't have the skills, and frankly, most of us are intimidated by sports, and it's frustrating and aggravating to try to figure it out on our own. And
Mm.
so when I started coaching soccer with my first son, Will, I got Soccer for Dummies and I read that book. And then I went on the internet and I started reading and watching YouTube videos. And, I tried to put together as best I could, because I'm a researcher. I tried to put together the best possible plan for that team. And I kept on thinking, this ought to be easier. This should be so much simpler, given all the different resources that are available, all the technology that we have. And so when I left the Walt Disney Company a couple of years ago, I set out on a path to try to make coaching more fun for parents,
Mm.
playing more enjoyable for kids, and the whole youth sports experience and journey more magical for everybody.
Mm.
And I brought together an amazing team of technologists, including my partner, Reed Schaffner, who co-founded the company, and a bunch of great storytellers and content creators. And what we've put together is an app called MOJO that basically is the one-stop solution for moms and dads who want to help their kids either by coaching a team, and eventually who just want to be there and give their kids uh, a chance to learn all the wonderful lessons that come from playing sports. Because as you know better than anybody, sports is the best teacher. It's an
Yeah.
incredible teacher, and we wanted to surround families in the United States and around the world with the very best resources to help them have this great journey from around the time their kids are 4, when they typically would start playing organized sports, sort of those sweet little soccer games where they all look like bumblebees, and those sweet little baseball games where they're just starting to hit off a tee, and take them on the journey all the way up to about age 13 or 14, when, if they're going to stay with sports, they're going to get handed off to the high school sports complex where they're professional coaches. About 70% of kids stop before the age 13. So the largest pool of young athletes, believe it or not, is in that 4 to 14 range. Moms and dads are about 80% of the coaches in that range.
Mm.
So almost all the coaches are volunteer parents, and most of them don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And that's why we created MOJO, to help all those families have a better experience with sports.
You're coaching the parents, which as higher level coaches, we always say that a lot of times the parents are responsible for the kids not enjoying the game, or they're responsible for the pressure that the older athlete puts on themselves, from a performance standpoint, because the parents are taking the experiences that they had, you know, in life, as in their own sports journey or even in their career path, and bringing it to these kids, which could be dangerous.
Dan, I agree. I think we've heard this a lot. And I'd say one of the refrains you hear a lot is that parents are the problem in youth sports. I'd say our philosophy is different. We think parents are the answer in youth
Mm,
sports. And if we can get parents what they need, we can give them trusted resources with video, with text, with graphics, if we can give them the answers brought to them by the best childhood development experts in the world, brought to them by some of the best subject experts, soccer coaches, other coaches in the world. We think that if they get those resources in a way that's understandable and it's manageable, parents are the best thing we got going, because parents are the ones who are going to encourage those kids to get off the couch. They're going to encourage them to put down the screens. They're going to encourage them to come to the field. They're going to encourage them to practice another day instead of not practicing at all. They're the best hope for youth sports to work,
mm,
especially at that beginning phase from 4 to 14, when it's really all on the parents and the volunteers. And especially when we're talking about kind of rec programs and grassroots programs. Look, if you're as good an athlete as you are, the world is going to find you, Dana, and the world is going to take care of you if you're in the top 1%. The world taps your parents on the shoulder and whispers to them, we have opportunities for Dana. Dana's going to go far in sports. For 99.9% of everybody else, you're kind of on your own.
yeah.
And that's where MOJO comes in. MOJO's for everybody else. The world looks after the very best athletes, but for everybody else who still needs sports and who still wants sports and still can benefit from sports, that's where MOJO comes in.
And there's a lot of talk today where people say, hey, we're not in favor of everybody gets a trophy or the trophy generation. These kids are not learning to compete. How do you guys take on topics like that?
So I think we're non-judgmental. We basically say, you're welcome at MOJO. We believe the competition is healthy. We believe the competition is good, but we also think it needs to be put into the proper perspective.
Mm,
We think that winning is part of life. Winning is part of video games the kids are playing. Winning is part of sports that they're watching on TV, but you got to put it in the right perspective. And so we're not judgmental. If you're the great Santini and you want to come and use MOJO, our tools and our resources are great for you. And if you're somebody who everybody gets a trophy, MOJO can be helpful for you too. Our attitude, though, is we have one very important philosophy, which is we think that you should coach the kid first and then the sport. That is, we think that the whole thing in this sweet age group between 4 and 14 is that you really try to see the kid and try to understand who it is who's standing there in front of you, who's wanting to play sports, and understand the mindset of a 5-year-old, the mindset of an 8-year-old, and not bring all of your high school memories or your collegiate memories or frankly your your adult ideas about what sport should be to the field. You should meet a 5-year-old where a 5-year-old is, and MOJO is here to help you understand the mind of a 5-year-old and the mind of an 8-year-old. And we have videos and articles that help you get inside a kid's head, so that when you're working with an 8-year-old, you understand that just because you have an 8-year-old yourself does not mean you understand 8-year-olds.
Yeah.
And so we think that's a really important piece of it.
Oh,
You know, I do think, just as a personal observation, I think that the professionalization of sports, I think that the role of money in sports, I think that the role of elite teams and competitive teams and travel teams and clubs have led to a world where there are haves and have-nots. And I think that that's not a good thing for sports. I think that youth sports should be accessible and available to everybody. I think that everybody should have good coaching. And I think that unfortunately, the focus on winning and the focus on being able to pay, that's led to families having to drop out. That's having families get forced out. That's led to families getting burned out. And that's not good in terms of the long-term future of sports.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. The other thing is too, and many don't consider this, just because you see somebody today that may not be a high performer doesn't mean that they can't be. You know, there's a developmental curve that has to be taken into consideration as well. And you have these late bloomers that they bloom late, and that's when their talent really accelerates, and it's later than somebody else. So you could see that all-star, and as you know, that all-star 8-year-old that fizzles. Meanwhile, this kid that was sort of moving like a baby giraffe because he doesn't know his body yet, who maybe not performing as well, is the guy that actually goes and makes it, you know, the high school team, the college team, or maybe even pro.
It's like, I wish I could impart this to all the parents out there with their 5-year-olds who they think are going to the 2040 Olympics. I wish I could impart this to all the parents of 6-year-olds who think that their kid is destined for Division I, or this 7-year-old who's going to get a pro contract. The statistics, I'm sorry, parents, your kid is not going pro. And the chances are, this is a line that a friend of mine here in LA likes to say about kids in West Los Angeles. Mom, Dad, your kid has a better chance of owning a professional team than playing for one. Which,
you know, I got to tell you this. One of my clients, he asked me this one time. You'll get a kick out of this. He says he lives in Scarsdale, New York. His name's Barry, and he said, Dana, do you know what a bar mitzvah is? And I said, oh, that's when a Jewish boy becomes a man. He goes, no, that's the day when a Jewish boy realizes he has a better chance of owning the sports team than playing for it. But he was one of those type A parents that was extreme. And he said, listen, I had to have that moment. I had to have that realization moment for my kid that he wasn't going to be that pro golfer that I wanted him to be.
Yeah. I think that the pressure that parents feel and put on their kids to you nailed it. I can go down the entire roster of my son Will's first team when he was on the Mets and then on the Angels, and I can go down that roster, and the kids who were the best at age 5 and 6, some of them stuck with it. Many of them did not. The ones who were the best at age 8 or 10 stopped growing. Yep. The ones who you never ever thought were going to ever hit the ball could hit a curveball, and suddenly they're the ones playing in high school. And the world gets thrown upside down, as you say, as some kids find their bodies, other kids stop growing, slow down. In the case of my wonderful son, Will, who is a really, really talented baseball player, made all the all-star teams. Truth is, I think he'd admit it, that somewhere around the age of 12 or 13, when the ball began to curve, he began to hit it less.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it was really hard to hit a curveball at an off-speed pitch. And you know what? He's now a full-time goalkeeper playing soccer on one of the best 16-year-old soccer teams in Southern California, and he
Awesome.
loves soccer, and he does not even think about curveballs anymore, because you find what you're good at, you find your body, and especially for these 4 to 14-year-olds, it really shouldn't be about the Olympics or about Division I contracts. It should just be about having fun and about making friends and about learning all the lifetime benefits that come with sports. Because as you know, I mean, the connection between playing sports in that age group and getting better grades, getting better test scores, staying out of trouble, smoking fewer cigarettes, taking fewer drugs, going on to higher education, getting a better job, getting better wages, becoming a CEO even. There's data on that. Across the board for boys and girls, youth sports early on correlated with all those great results, not to mention the main reason to do it, which is to have fun and to be really well connected to your friends and your parents.
Yeah. Yep. And those lifetime memories that you make in being involved with sports, I think that's one. And the unfortunate thing is when we hear statistics about so many kids dropping out, for me, what I take from that is how many kids are missing out on all of those years of development and great coaching. So if you're dropping out at 11, that means, you missed 5, 6 years of great development and coaching that could have been had through middle school, high school, and beyond.
And it's the opportunity that who knows, maybe that 11-year-old who stopped playing because they had a bad experience with a bad coach, that 11-year-old may have been on a path in a couple of years to hitting the hell out of the ball and becoming a great player, but you never know. You just don't know. There's one other piece of this that I think is important, Dana, which is also about the relationship between moms and dads and their kids. And I want to credit one of the great coaches in LA who our son played for on the Tigers, minor league baseball, a coach named Mike Rosenfeld. Mike told us at the family meeting at the local Italian restaurant before the season, he said, look, I've got 2 boys. They've played sports all the way through high school, got a great relationship with them. But if you want a great relationship with your kid in youth sports, and I'm talking about 8-year-old, 9-year-olds now, if you want a great relationship with your kid, the most important thing is to remember the following sentence that you will say, and it's the only sentence you're allowed to say as a family on this team. And the sentence is, I love watching you play. You can say that on the way to the game. I can't wait to watch you play. You can say it in the stands during the game. It's so much more fun. It's so much fun to watch you play. And after the game, on the way to pizza or a hamburger or ice cream, you can say, that was so much fun watching you play. Everything else, why did you drop that ball? How come you swung on that pitch? Why did you run the bases backwards? Why did you throw the ball to second instead of first? That's my job. I'm the coach. Your job as the parent is, I love watching you play. And if you want to have a great relationship with your kids in high school and you want them to continue talking to them, do not pick them apart on the way to the game or during the game or after the game. Let the coaches do that. Your job as a parent is just to appreciate and to cheer and to encourage them.
Yeah.
And we've internalized that. And that's a lot of the message that's inside MOJO, which is that there's some really great ways to talk to kids. There's some really great ways to encourage them. There's even a magic ratio of the amount of positive to negative feedback that you should give kids that's explained inside MOJO. But most of all, in this age from 4 to 14, it's really about encouragement. It's, I love watching you play, and I love being there for you when you're out there having fun playing sports.
Yeah. Which, behind some of the craziness for a lot of parents is actually the truth. They love watching their kids play. It becomes difficult for some to express that in that natural way. Their expression of, I love watching you play, is, damn it, why didn't you hit that ball? But they're still the kid's biggest fan. They just also happen to be the biggest critic at the same time.
Yeah, so that's one area that we're not going to get to solve at MOJO, which is we're not going to get to solve for all the parents who express their love through relentless, harsh criticism.
There's a lot of therapists out there that can help with that one, Ben.
Yes.
We can't do it all. But what I find interesting is, as you're speaking about MOJO, I'm also thinking about the other side of your life. Not Coach Ben Sherwood, but Ben Sherwood, executive leader, business pro. I would think a lot of these lessons are also transferable to business and leadership in general, in terms of developing people and talent, and you know.
Oh, no, look, I think that um, everybody who I've worked with over the last 10 or 15 years knows that sports analogies come easily, and that there's a lot of comparisons to teamwork. There's a lot of comparisons to winning the championship. There's a lot of comparisons to the grit and the grinding that has to take place in order to get to your goals. And I think that there are a lot of analogies to sports and to coaching and to inspiring and motivating and leading, setting a clear goal, setting a strategy to get to that goal, and then supporting and encouraging the members of the team to get to that goal. And sometimes I succeeded in that regard, and sometimes I failed. There was a lot that I learned along the way.
Mm.
And I sometimes, as I work in this area with MOJO, and we're learning a lot about the secrets of successful coaching, sometimes wish, damn, I wish I'd known that when I was coaching the Rattlesnakes in soccer. And damn, I wish I'd known that when I was running ABC News. And shoot, I wish I'd known that when I was at Disney Television, because maybe that interaction or that moment might have gone a little bit better. But I think that we're lifelong learners, and that's part of what I've loved about this experience starting MOJO, is I'm surrounded by dynamic young people who are lifelong learners too, and we're all just trying to learn and grow and help spread some of that knowledge so that everybody can have a better experience with sports. And yes, people can have a better experience with business too. The magic ratio I mentioned earlier, the magic ratio, which is this idea of positive to negative feedback, has been studied extensively by social scientists, and you're familiar with this, Dana. The magic ratio is believed to be 5 to 1, 5 positive, constructive comments for every 1 negative comment. So 5 truthful, specific pieces of positive feedback for every 1 negative comment that you offer, especially for kids, especially for in this age group of 4 to 14. With professional athletes, coaches like Phil Jackson and Doc Rivers believe that ratio, that positive to negative or magic ratio, is probably closer to 3 to 1.
That's
that the great athletes can kind of handle it. But Phil Jackson has even said that it's amazing, even with the greatest athletes in the world, like on the Chicago Bulls or the LA Lakers, that you can say those 3 things that are positive, specific, truthful, constructive, but the pro athlete only hears the 1 negative one. And the pro athlete only hears that 1 criticism. And so even he has said on video and in interviews that when he learned the secret of the magic ratio, that's really actually what helped unlock the Bulls and the Lakers and helped lead to his 11 championships. So that magic ratio, it works in sports. It's also been studied in business. It's been studied in the military. It's been shown that positive to negative ratio is crucial in driving peak performance and driving success. And most people get that ratio wrong. And I will admit, at various points in my career, I had more negative to positive in some of my feedback in situations. And typically the results weren't what I wanted. And I think that the more one learns that positive negative ratio and the secrets of that balance and getting that balance right, you really help unlock performance in the people you're trying to coach and motivate.
Yeah, I would also think too, it would be beneficial to deploy that formula when you're not, in the middle of a battle with somebody. Like if somebody has a failing moment and then you're trying to go hit them with 3 positive things and 1 constructive, maybe we need a little space in between that, perhaps. I mean, I know a lot of leaders that are going to listen to this are going to say, listen, when somebody doesn't, cost us or doesn't do something well, I don't know if I could just hit them with the 1, 2, 3. And
I think the timing is an interesting question. And one of my favorite coaches and someone I've admired for so long, aforementioned Phil Jackson, has written about this in a variety of different books. And he's talked a lot about how the best coaches actually never coach during the game. That during the actual competition, the coach can sit quietly, and if one has properly prepared the team can hear the coach's voice during the actual game, even if the coach is silent. and that the team can run the plays and can self-correct, because if a coach has done it properly, the team knows what the coach is thinking, even if the coach is not shouting or yelling on the sidelines. And so in terms of when to deliver the feedback, Phil Jackson's view was you don't even need to do it on the court. You don't even need to do it during the game. You can pick a different time in the locker room later, the next day at practice. You can pick a totally different time to come and offer a few pieces of truthful, constructive, specific feedback and one highly specific piece of constructive negative feedback.
Yeah. And you used the word earlier, that was the word truth. You still have to be truthful in what it is you're delivering. And to your point that you just made, most of my career I worked under Joe Torre. And Joe Torre, if you watch Joe Torre in the dugout, he has a very even face, sitting on the top step, or sitting actually in the dugout, and it doesn't look like he's doing anything. And you know what he does? He gives a guy, tap on the butt. Hey, nice job. He'll walk up to somebody and maybe whisper in their ear. But a lot of his leadership style was, again, a lot of one-on-one, come in the office, sit with him. But his in-game style was much like Phil described and you just mentioned.
Joe Torre is another, he had a great run out here with the Dodgers, and it was fun to watch him coach. And of course, as a Dodger fan, it was watched a lot of his years on the Yankees, and yeah, his calm demeanor, and also his amazing relationship with players who respected him so much. A lot of lessons there.
Yeah, it was very cool to be a part of it and to see how he made it very inclusive for everybody. Everybody had a role, and he valued the lowest guy, which at the time I was just getting started in my career. I was that guy, and he made me feel very important to the whole mix. And I always said that's great leadership right there.
Yeah. That's that wonderful quality of seeing everybody and of being interested in everybody's thoughts. This is a funny analogy, but just as a quick aside, the patron saint of MOJO is Ted Lasso from the Apple TV series Ted Lasso, about the American football coach who ends up coaching a Premier League soccer team in the UK, a fictional team. And I mentioned him because he's a coach who sees everybody, and the equipment manager is just as important as the star player on the team. And I know it's just a fictional story, and I know it's just a TV show, but we love Ted Lasso because that's an important part of coaching, which is you're not just paying attention to the star player. You're paying attention to everybody who makes the team work and everybody who helps make this team successful. And in fact, the equipment manager can have ideas that are just as valuable as the famous scout or the star athlete.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned the equipment manager with the Yanks. One of my best friends is Rob Kakuza. He's the equipment manager over there. And, he would always say he'd get calls from scouts and from other organizations asking about players. Hey, how's so-and-so in the clubhouse? We see him on the field. We know how he is, in terms of, hit the public appearance, but who is he? So everybody has a role, the janitor that's cleaning every day. He sees how people are walking, what their moods are that day, or they see a lot.
And they see a lot, and they know a lot, and I think there's a lot to learn from them, and to be open to all that feedback.
Yeah. So Ben, I coach a lot of high performers in sports and business, and there's this word success, and everybody that I know is pursuing it and chasing it. As I do more reading about you and see what you've done, your body of work is huge. The positions that you've held have been pretty amazing. How have you balanced all of that, and you're being a family man and doing all of these things? What's been the secret to you sort of staying, I hate to use the word balanced, but I have to, but like, how have you done that?
First of all, I appreciate the frame of the question, which I'm not totally sure I agree with, because in my own head, I'm always thinking that there's more to do and I haven't accomplished what I want to accomplish, and set all kinds of new goals for myself all the time. I'd say actually that I also challenge a little bit of the framework of balance, because one of the things I remember learning a long time ago on the Good Morning America segment when I was in the control room and running that show. I remember we did a segment about how to live your life in balance. And there was an expert who came on who said that the secret to life is actually not to learn to live your life in balance. The secret to life was to learn to live your life out of balance, because balance is impossible. And somehow that really stuck with me, because I think that when you're starting a new company, your life is going to be out of balance. You're going to be working crazy long hours. You're going to be obsessive. You're going to be distracted, and you're going to be going all out, and things are not going to be in perfect balance. But then there's going to be a period of time, a little bit after you've launched the new business, there's going to be a little period of time when you can kind of recalibrate a little bit and sort of flip a little bit harder toward some of your other priorities, like fitness or like family or like relationships. Yeah. And I think that I've been lucky in greatest choice that I've ever made, and the luckiest choice I ever made was marrying my wife Karen. And in the way our marriage works and in the way our relationship works, we both know that there's room in our marriage for one crazy job at a time. And there's one of us is always sort of got to keep an eye on and be mindful of our boys, and to make sure that things are straight with our sons. And so we've alternated along the way. And sometimes when I've had a crazy job, I've been the one who's been sort of all out on work. And sometimes when she's had something crazy going on professionally, I've pulled back a little bit. So I think that living life out of balance has been what's worked for us. And also, I think knowing that idea of balance is pretty elusive. It's pretty darn hard.
And it sounds like you've had times in your life when you were sprinting, and then times when you pull back and just let things happen. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I think that I've been pretty fortunate that there have been moments where I've had to go all out, and then I've had moments to recharge and actually to replenish and to refresh and to think. I think one of the things about some of the all out positions that I've had and the all out roles is that when you're going full speed and when you're trying to lead an organization into battle and to kind of to win a hill or to win a championship, sometimes you don't have as much time to sort of survey the whole field, to look ahead to the next mountain, to think. And so I've always found that having periods of time to actually slow down, to jog instead of run all out, and to read, think, have always led to periods of creativity and to new ideas. And so I think that actually some of the time when I left Disney, I spent some time actually reading, thinking, and hatching this idea for MOJO. It didn't just happen all of a sudden. It took some thought. It took a lot of research. It took a lot of conversations with people. And then it took finding the right team and putting together the right team. And all of that time, I'd say we were jogging. And then we really started to sprint about a year ago, when we really went at it. And now we're really full force, full steam, and we're really going for it.
Yeah. How much pressure does somebody like you put on himself?
I think that you wouldn't want to hear my interior monologue. You would not want to hear.
I'm so sick. I actually would love to, but
you wouldn't want to hear that interior monologue. That interior monologue usually sounds like you could be doing a lot more. You could be a lot more productive. You could be much more efficient. You forgot to do these 10 things today. You were thinking about doing these 10 things, and how come you didn't do these 10 things? And
sounds like my head.
You need to push yourself harder. I'd say, I think that I am my own harshest critic, and there's really nothing that anybody could ever say that comes even close to sort of what I think of my own work and how I want to try to improve it. And which is one of the interesting things, by the way, about some of the people I've worked for, which is that even when my bosses have delivered criticism, sometimes harsh criticism of what I've done, it never sounds nearly as bad as what I say to myself about what I've just done.
Yeah. As you answered that question, I asked Kevin Youkilis, former Red Sox, the same question. Yep, that's him. That's my guy. And he said to me, I said, how did you deal with the fans, in Fenway? And he said, well, listen, they got on me. He said, but here's the thing. Nobody gets on me more than me. So I didn't even feel them.
That sounds right. And by the way, I think that's another interesting thing about putting a team together, by the way. One of the things, one of my early bosses and mentors in television news, 60 Minutes producer, who came over to ABC and was the first person who gave me my first shot when I was 25. He hired me, and he said he only had two questions when he was hiring people. One question was, do you watch TV? Because he thought that if you didn't watch TV, you should not work in TV. And there are a lot of TV snobs who are interested in working in TV, but don't actually watch it. So he was always interested in knowing, what do you watch? And he formed a bunch of judgments based upon what you watched and what your range of interests was and your curiosity. And he thought that was a very instructive question, especially in the television business. Because as you know, there are a bunch of people who turn their noses up at television, but still for some reason want to work in it. So why do you want to work in it if you don't watch it? And then the second question he would try to get at whether or not someone was afraid of failure. And he found that if you hired people who watched TV and who were afraid of failing, that they would work harder, try harder, and go longer because of that fear of failure. And if you can find people who share that, I consider it to be a little bit of a personality defect, which is that the thrill of victory is nothing compared to the pain and the agony of defeat. And if you can sort of identify who those people are and have those people be part of your team, you'll have a lot of hardworking people who will go very, very far and will not stop until they've achieved victory. And their apprehension about defeat and the pain of defeat for those folks is so much greater than the ephemeral feeling of victory, that you'll get people who are highly motivated. And I haven't really followed that advice in hiring people. I'm not recommending that, but I'm just thinking that it was an interesting observation about how people who really, really are focused on winning and determined to succeed. It's that famous line from that apocryphal SEC coach in football, which is, when you go 11-1, no one ever asks you about the 11. I think that's that defect that some of us have, which is that if you go 11-1, what you're thinking about is that one, and how come you let that one get away, and how come you didn't work hard enough on the one, how come you didn't see what was coming, and you obsess about the one, and you can't really enjoy the 11. That's a little bit of what my first boss instilled, and that's one of the things he was looking for, was the people who really are focused on, they're going to go for those 11, but then they're going to really obsess about that one and not want that ever to happen again.
Yeah, I love that. Derek Jeter would always say, hey, I have a question for you. Do you love to win or do you hate to lose? And I always said, why do you ask people that question? He goes, because listen, everybody loves to win. He said, but I want guys on my team that hate to lose. Sort of that I actually like how you described it as you said a personality defect. And I get it. And it's a wild defect, but it could really help accelerate a team and an organization.
But there's an interesting thing, by the way, I would just note, which I love about Steve Kerr and the Warriors. He talks a lot about joy, and he talks a lot about bringing joy to the Warriors. And it's an interesting counterpoint to what we've just been talking about, which I want to emphasize, which is that the thing that I've always tried to instill in teams is to love winning, and to love the feeling of achieving the shared or collective goal, and to celebrate, really celebrate the moments when we've accomplished the goal we set, and then set a new goal, and then go for that, and really always have a bottle of champagne in the fridge to celebrate, really celebrate the moments where we've achieved what we want to achieve. And I think that in an environment where you're so afraid of the loss, and an environment where you're so frozen by the fear of what if we drop a game, or if we drop a set, or if we drop something, I think that that can be paralyzing, and I think that that can be really corrosive, and that can also be negative. And so I just want to emphasize that, and back to sort of the MOJO ethos, we're all about the joy, and we're all about celebrating the fun parts, and we're all about, like, they've studied the most successful teams, and the most successful teams love winning and love thrashing their opponents.
Oh yeah.
And they love winning by huge margins, and they love the feeling of and they want to win, and they celebrate the victories, and they celebrate the team and the relationships and each other's success. And so I think that the joy part of it is a really important piece, and not the fear piece. Even though it turns out that the people who love winning and celebrate winning also hate losing.
Yeah. It sounds like too, even as you were describing that monologue before, like some of that could be a fear-driven monologue. Maybe a lot of it, but that accelerates you to do things maybe you wouldn't have done without that going on up here,
Yeah.
potentially.
Yeah, I'd say my interior monologue is not fear-based. My
Okay.
interior monologue is, if something bad will happen if you don't keep going or keep trying harder. It's actually just sort of my internal sense of expectation and standard, and what
Mhm.
I want and expect from myself. I don't think if I don't do this, that this will not work or I will fail. I think just more like, you know what you're reaching for, you know what it takes, and my friend Trevor Moad, who is
Yeah, I know Trevor.
performance coach and writer, and Trevor wrote a whole book on "It Takes What It Takes," and that was the title of the book. And his view is that if you want to play on the offensive line at Alabama, it takes a certain thing. You got to give a certain thing, and if you can't do that, you don't get to do that. And it's a choice. The choice is, do you want to do what it takes to reach that level? And if you do not make that choice, you will not be at that level. So forget about it. Nick Saban's not going to put you in that position.
Yeah.
And my internal monologue is, I think I kind of know what it's going to take to make MOJO work, and it's a choice, and I have to make that choice, and I have to really go for it, and I have to inspire the team to go for it.
Mhm.
And sometimes when I fall short of what I think it's going to take, I'm punishing with myself about how I did not do enough today, because I know what it's going to take, and I need to do more.
Yeah. How do you not let that take you over though? Because I'm asking this because I've heard it so many times from CEOs that say, "Hey, I can't turn off. I feel like this is just, it owns me." They know what it takes, but they can't turn it off, and it becomes a negative more so than a positive.
Yeah. I wish I had good wisdom about that, Dana. I'm not. I'm. My dog is barking, and forgive
That's
me for a
okay.
second. I'll just hold on while I'll let him bark for a second. I wish I had good advice on that question. I'm 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 imperfect in that regard.
Mm,
As I said before, sometimes it overtakes me, and sometimes I have it in control, sort of like a dragon.
yeah.
and 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 I'm not sure I've got the best advice about how to handle it.
Yeah, that's okay. Maybe that is the best advice. That who knows if it could actually be handled,
Yeah.
And it's
I think your observation earlier, though, is accurate, which is that that is a powerful motivator. It's like a nuclear reactor for people to drive them, but nuclear reactors have accidents, and it can be radioactive in your head if you can't contain that nuclear reaction.
yeah. Yeah, and that's what I hear is like, I can't turn it off. I can't turn it off. And sometimes when you resist something, it's worse. Sometimes you have to embrace, don't resist. But Ben, I have one more question for you. I ask everybody this at the end of my show. I call it the Becoming a Champion show. It's fitting as to what we've been talking about. I feel like we're all on a journey to become our best, to become our champion self. What does the word champion mean to Ben Sherwood?
Um, it's where we started. the conversation when you asked about who I was when I was a little kid. I grew up in Los Angeles. I grew up watching UCLA Bruins and John Wooden. I grew up um, when UCLA almost never lost a basketball game, and when they were led by this Wizard of Westwood, this amazing coach. And I put character first. I think that as John Wooden talked about character, that the champions are people of unusually high character and unusually high standards and unusually high work ethic, who and character is destiny. And that's what John Wooden talked about, and that's what John Wooden wanted on his teams. He wanted young men who find character, who, regardless of what happened in the game, put in the effort and gave it everything they've got. And so I think that at MOJO, we're not about the championships, and we're not about the dubs. We're about the kids and the quality of the time that the kids and the parents spend on the field, and the character that gets forged during that special time between 4 and 14. And we think that a champion is the person who develops those personal qualities of character, of integrity, of motivation, of drive, of discipline. Those characters, those human qualities that lead to championships that are not necessarily trophies, that are not necessarily belts, that are not necessarily cups, but are instead sort of the things that matter to us, which is success in life, happiness in life, a sense of accomplishment, a sense of knowing how to set a goal, achieve the goal, and do it in the right way. Yeah. And so I think that to us and to me, forged from those parents of mine and forged in that family, being a champion is really just about character, and it's not about the dubs.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's very Wooden-esque in that, that's what he would say too. You follow the pyramid, championships will be behind that, or in your near future. That's very cool. Well, I appreciate you sharing all this today, because I know there'll be a lot of people that benefit, and number one, seeing this side of you, but number two, really getting them to think about youth sports differently, and even how they parent differently, and for those that are leading businesses, differently as well.
I think one of the things, Dan, I would just leave you with, and thank you for today, and appreciate your interest and your thoughtful questions. I think that a lot of moms and dads walking out onto a field as a volunteer coach don't realize that this is an unbelievable, important responsibility in which it's not daycare. It's not an hour or two of daycare. It's actually a relationship that a kid will remember, as I do Mr. Franklin when I was an 8-year-old on the Phillies. Like, I remember Mr. Franklin and who he was and what he stood for, and his belief in us, no matter how bad we were on the field, and his belief in us and his desire to help us reach our potential. And I think that some of that magic has gotten lost. I think that some of that has gotten lost with what's happening in youth sports, and we're here. MOJO is here to put some of that mojo, some of that magic back into youth sports. That really magical time, and to give parents what they need to make the most of that time when they're out there. They leave work, they get to the field, and they're ready to make a really memorable experience, as opposed to, frankly, not having anything and not having any ideas and not having had the time to get it together. So we take all that aggravation and frustration and all the time out on the front end. We make it so easy, and then we deliver a great and memorable experience when you're doing it. And that's sort of the whole goal. And that's what we're here for.
And you let the parent have joy as well as the kid.
Exactly.
Which I think we can all benefit from, a little bit more joy in life, just.
Exactly.
Wasn't that a great episode? I told you guys it was going to be good. And anytime you can get somebody like Ben Sherwood to talk about what he's got going on, what it was like to run Disney, And I found it interesting to learn about some of the chatter and the noise that he has in his own head. I think we can all relate to that, especially the high performers out there, those of us that are chasing success and chasing the next level. Sometimes we hear this noise in our head and we say, are we the only one? Are we the only ones that are hearing this noise? Well, you're not alone. And I also found it cool to learn about the techniques that he's teaching through MOJO and how developing young athletes and developing young talent, how those lessons can be transferred into business, into team development, and into people development on the business side of things and the life side of things as well. So I hope you enjoyed. This is Coach Dana Cavalier, and if you did enjoy, make sure you subscribe, join the channel, share it, like it, help us grow this thing and grow this team of champions. We'll be back next week with a new episode. I hope you enjoy. See ya.